Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. It is 2:01, so you know exactly what time it is. The Jaybefaunt channel is available on all major podcast platforms, so go ahead and subscribe to me there. Also part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can find me on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Thank you so very much for everybody joining me today. If you guys would like to, you guys can also go to my Substack at jaybefaunt.substack.com to get email notifications so that you guys know whenever I do go live. And yes, so just to let you guys know, as per usual, every single time I have a guest on, then I talk to them first, and then we go to the rest of the chat to say our salutations and hellos. So I would like to introduce my guest for today. He is the founder of Indie Left Media and co-founder in the Indie News Network, executive producer for Tara Reid Show, co-host of the INN, author of multiple articles, editor, live stream engineer, publisher, commentator. Welcome to Indie Left. Good to see you.
Ooh, JB, I'm so honored just to be on this channel. I love you, man. Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to introduce is that a lot of times people who may tune in, they'll hear me shout you and INN out from time to time. This is the man behind the plan as far as not only just the Indie News Network, but also really amplifying a lot of our content throughout various different independent news media outlets. So I just, first of all, want to thank you for the hard work that you do, as well as the team that you've built on INN.
Well, again, thanks so much. It's been a hell of a growth. You know, I was a guy sitting in chat and watching streams and a fan of of independent media, but mostly because I realized that corporate media was lying to us. And after watching some independent media, I was like, I think I can do this. I have the equipment and have some opinions. So I started, first I was just aggregating independent news, where I'm sharing. At first, Jesus, we can go all the way back. It was like all the shitlib stuff that we now make fun of, but that's where we all started, right? Was within Bernie land, sharing the TYTs and the Kyles and we don't do that anymore. But that was our origins, was in aggregating a bunch of independent news, realizing that they weren't actually really telling the truth either, were they? So let's find who's actually telling the truth, who's actually giving the stories from the perspective of workers, from the perspective of the people in the field, from the perspective of anti-capitalists, and from the perspective of anti-imperialists. So we started covering that, and it changed our whole focus. And we went from progressive news daily to independent left media. And then after about a year and a half, started doing a show. Like, hey, I noticed that there was some stuff that wasn't being covered. So on my own channel, I started doing a show with Reef, my buddy Reef, called How Do We Miss That? Because, hey, how did we miss that at the end of the week? There's so many stories, so much flies at us. That was the whole idea behind the show. And then after that, we'd watch crazy cat videos and weed videos and funny stuff for about an hour. And, just like eye bleach to get rid of all the crap that we have to deal with all week.
Yeah.
And then what we saw, and alongside of that, we saw you guys building at that time, Fred Hampton Leftists, okay, growing as a network and coming together as independents to build something. And I said, there's a bunch of other independents out here that we can do something similar, inspired by what you guys did and by what Nico and MCSC did as well. Those were two of the largest inspirations for us coming together. So I reached out to a bunch of these independents and let's build a network. Let's share resources and let's share each other's stuff and go on as guests on each other's shows and collaborate. So that's, again, I appreciate the opportunity to kind of share and tell people about it, because so we've been doing this. That's about 2 years, almost 2 years. Indie News Network's been around, and I love it. I love it every day.
Definitely. You started already going into some of the origins of how you got into this, but can you dive just a little bit deeper into your origins, especially from where you were back in the day, to where you are now politically, and how did you get actually into the independent media space? If you can give us just a little bit more detail regarding that, because I think a lot of times, a lot of us go into that, in this space, and a lot of us have that similar origin story. But was it different from you, or is it the same?
Well, again, I started out as a fan. I started out as somebody who was in the chats and moderating a lot of the chats for channels, helping them out, just kind of observing and listening to what everybody was saying. But really, it started out, my evolution was, I was a Bernie guy. Originally, I was, kind of an MSNBC shitlib for a long time. Bernie radicalized me away from the corporate media side to realize, and he kind of opened my eyes to how they were lying about his campaign, which opened my eyes to the fact that they were lying about not just that, but a lot of other things. Look, I was an Obama simp, and I'll admit that. And I was just kind of unplugged and comfortable until I awakened, and it lit a fire under me. So 2020, Bernie gets knifed. I got super excited for 2020 campaign. I thought that Bernie was actually going to be the fighter that we wanted him to be, and it turns out that he wasn't. But at the time, we didn't know that. So I started saying, all these different channels that I watch, nobody's really aggregating all of this into one central place. Yeah, which is why I started a newsletter. I really didn't see anybody out there doing it for a long time. Then I saw Bernie get knifed in October, in March, and that's when, about a month later, I'll give a shout out, Richard Medhurst, and I know you've had him on. Shout out to my brother Richard Medhurst. Yeah. He did a stream, and he put up a clip on Twitter. I'll never forget it. It was about the middle of April. It was right after Bernie conceded, and at the end of it, he claps his hands and he goes, "Wake up, asshole!" And
I remember that.
Bro, yeah. It literally snapped me awake. And I started going to his live streams. That night I went into his Discord, and I actually got to talk to him in face-to-face in like a voice chat in a Discord with a bunch of people. It was awesome. We were on for hours.
Yeah.
And I knew there was something special there. And I started to connect with some of the people in this community. And I realized immediately. Now remember, this was during lockdown. This is during pandemic. I'd never been on Discord before. And all of a sudden, I found community of like-minded people that I could get on a chat with and that I could talk with all day long, voice chat, video chat. It was incredible. Yeah. So I think Discord was kind of part of my evolution, which was, how do I aggregate independent news and use Discord as a tool to do that? So I figured out how to do that. And that, again, opened me up to meeting Reef, because Reef started the Jimmy Dore Discord unofficially years ago.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, how about that? So that's originally how I met Reef. Was I went into the Jimmy Dore Discord, and he and I were just kind of communicating, and then we got connected through another network that put us kind of together on a project called the U.S. Solutions Summit back in 2021. And but at that point, I had already kind of dropped. Now, the other thing that big radicalized me. So Bernie was a big focal point. The other one was Julian Assange trial in September of 2020. All right, during the presidential campaign, during September, and it was Richard Medhurst, who was in the Old Bailey every single day. Yeah. He was in there, and then every day he'd come out and he'd do a live stream and he'd report on it. And I was still a fan of TYT at the time. I was begging them to cover this, and they just wouldn't. And it told me that even progressive media, there was a line that they wouldn't cross. There was something that they wouldn't cover. Yep. And this was the most important press freedom case of all time. How could they completely ignore it? And I was done with them after that. And then came Force the Vote, which was just a further defining moment about who was on our side and who wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I remember all these things that you're actually talking about, which is very interesting. And it's very enlightening, because the thing is that, especially with the Richard Medhurst going to the trials for Julian Assange, I remember those as well, and how hard he was going for Julian Assange. And part of me was like, why is this guy going so hard for Julian Assange? I really didn't know that much about it until Misty. And then she enlightened me every which way, which I am deeply grateful for. But once she started talking about it, then that's when light bulb went off. And It's the exact same thing regarding TYT and all these other, what I like to call the legacy left outlets, where they were saying that the system is corrupt, but we got to change it from the inside. And from what I've gathered, especially as somebody that's part of a marginalized community, is you cannot change a burning building from the inside. You can't put the fire out from the inside. You have to go outside the building that's on fire, and you have to start putting the fire out from the outside. Because if you try to do it from the inside, you're just going to get burned. And so that's from one of the things that I realized, especially from watching a lot, that we're really just rah Democratic Party, just make sure they're not corporate, when in reality, that's kind of an oxymoron, because the entire duopoly itself is corporate anyway. So, yeah.
Well, and this whole trying to portray this Democrats are slightly less awful than Republicans, it doesn't really matter. What we need to do is tear down the whole structure and go against both of them, because they are equally monstrous. And there are a lot of ways that the Democrats are kind of worse than Republicans, and they don't want to own up to that side. They just completely ignore it, and it's 100% focused on Republicans. And I saw that during the 2020 campaign, that it was wall-to-wall Trump from a lot of these folks, and some of them still are covering Trump 24/7 for the last 3 years, and their channels have been tremendously inflated as a result. They've gotten rewarded by the algorithm. They've gotten rewarded from the shitlib community, the PMC class that has been fear-mongered against the fascism from the right, while they allow the fascism on the left and are quiet and silent about sending $150 billion to Ukraine, for example, about warmongering against China. There's, what's going on with it, being silent about what's happening in Israel and in Gaza and West Bank. There's so many hypocrisies happening there, where they're willing to ignore half the problem because it gets rid of the half that really makes them uncomfortable.
Of course.
The whole thing should make them uncomfortable.
Definitely. That's a really good point. You just drifted into my next question, which is perfect. Thank you so very much. What's your opinions on the direction of the left? Do you think it's a healthy and or necessary progression, or do you think it's divisive and stifling?
Well, I think that I've seen both sides of it, and there's a lot of ugliness and divisiveness, and there is definitely some wreckers and some personalities that are out there that are inflammatory, that are looking to start fights. But at the same time, look at what Rome is doing, building a library and doing mutual aid. Yeah. The term mutual aid really had not been part of the independent media vernacular until FHL RBN had started doing it and living it and showing people this is what we do for our communities. And this is what you can be doing and should be doing all the time. And it's been inspiring to so many people. And I think that staying local and realizing that at a federal level, because of the influence of big money in politics and the fact that we're all poor on the left and have no money, where can we have the most influence and the most reach and do the most, which is to help the people around us, the person next to you, with mutual aid primarily, but also by working together to have a conversation, come together and build structures together that go against what's happening right now, that tear that down. I think I do see both sides. I also am not necessarily, labels are bad, as my brother Reef always says. Stay independent, and I though left is kind of in the name, I've kind of been moving away from what the word left, and I know Chris Legion wrote an article famously about why I left the left. I don't even like the label. I'm to the left of the Democratic Party, if you consider whatever left is versus right. That's all just a mental structure anyway. But I have some thoughts that are somewhat conservative. I'm a father of young daughters, so I have certain feelings about the way that I want to see them protected. No, but I'm also, highly liberal, which is also called left. And why is liberal called left, conservative, right? There's all kinds of philosophical questions that go much deeper there that you've gone into with Dr. West that I absolutely love. And, that's a whole other story that's been happening right now. Again, division around certain personalities versus coming together on issues. When we talk about the certain issues that all unite us, which is what most of the stuff is, we great things happen. I mean, look at what's happening around Lahaina and around what the left and what the independent media community has done to try to help the residents of Lahaina when nobody else really has. And everything else has been about a corporate cash grab and about the World Economic Forum's 10-minute, 15-minute cities and all the other things. And they're ignoring, how do we help the people get their lives back? How do we help the people get their homes back? And shout out to my brother Pasta for flying out there to get the real story and to get some real footage and to tell you what's happening. Because, you know, I think that there's an important part of independent media. It's not perfect. There's parts of it that are ugly. And also there's infiltration and there is COINTELPRO. We can't be ignorant of the fact that this is a powerful entity. What we are doing, we are the only real counter to the corporate establishment and to their narrative. They want to tear that down because they want to control things. That gets into Matt Taibbi and the censorship industrial complex. We've talked about all these things on How Do We Miss That with Sab. I've seen Sabby interviewing Matt, doing a brilliant job talking to Matt about getting persecuted by Congress, having the IRS show up at his house, having Elon Musk so mad that he shuts off links to Substack. Holy crap. Still. Yeah. So we're fighting a huge battle, man. And we have to do it together. Like, there are definitely issues that will brawl over. But I think that if we can come together on certain issues, like on press freedom, I don't agree with libertarians on most things, but when it comes to cannabis legalization and press freedom and a couple other things, I'll work with them and I'll invite them to show up at a Free Assange rally. I'll invite them to show up at an the guys who run antiwar.com, they're anti-war. So let's do anti-war stuff together.
Of course.
We can talk about the other stuff and I'll work on you on the other side. Maybe you'll bring me to your side. And when we get to healthcare, we'll fight and we'll go, okay, we agree to disagree on that side. But guess what? We're not controlling that system right now anyway. Let's work on what we can. And let's do it together.
Of course.
Kumbaya. I am a big kumbaya guy, which is why I put a network together.
Of course. And that's why it's as big as it is too. And that's the lovely part about it. Many different perspectives. And so as far as perspectives is concerned, this brings me to my final question. As far as policy is concerned, because as a friend of mine, Afeni, has always said, policy is her love language. So it is my love language as well regarding politics. What would be your top 3 executive orders if you were president of the United States?
You know, you sent me this morning and I gave it a lot of thought and I kind of reacted right away. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm pretty sure that would be my answer. So my first answer is going to be that I would immediately eliminate student debt, because as president, you could do that with literally the signature of a pen. That would immediately ease the burden on so many Americans. You know, the next thing is, and I know that we've talked about this, we've been Medicare for All advocates. My man showed up and he was on the cover of the Orlando Sentinel on July 25th, 2021, JB, for being at the March for Medicare for All and showing up in Orlando. It would be enacting 1881A and giving everyone in the country Medicare for All. Okay, as president, I could potentially do that. And nobody really wants to talk about that. I would certainly do it right now for the people in East Palestine. I would do it for the people in Lahaina in Maui. These people are going to need a lot more than just healthcare. Let's ease that burden, because that's what we do for our country. All right. The third thing is, and this is more personal, and it probably would, there's a lot of other things that we could do, but let's free all the political prisoners. Mumia also, not just Julian Assange, because I recognize that there's a lot more political prisoners than Julian Assange, though that's the case that radicalized me and woke me up to all the persecution. But Daniel Hale, okay, Leonard Peltier, who's been in jail basically almost my whole life and your whole life for nonsense. They still won't let him out. I that would be the third thing that I would do, is sign an executive order to let all, and I'd bring Edward Snowden home. I'd bring my INN sister Tara Reid home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Don't forget about Asada Shakur, right?
Can't forget. Look, I don't want to. No, I said bring them all home. Free them all.
Yeah, bring them all home. Mm-hmm. That's also a really good point, because the thing is that a lot of times, people will ask, well, shouldn't the government not, go after their political enemies and prosecute their political enemies? That's really a sign of fascism. And as we've seen, it is both the sign of fascism in both of the parties, what I like to call the Demo Republican Party. And so as we've seen over the last few years, we've seen how they will go after anyone that shines a light on the corporate dictators, really their masters, and shows what they have done in order to have a stranglehold on the country. And so I think that's a really good, thoughtful answer from you. And I just want to thank you for that, because I think a lot of people don't think about people like that as much, especially within the independent media space, or some do, but there's others that really omit that out of the conversation.
Yeah. And, one of the I'm just a big believer in giving people a shot, especially that are small, that have something to say, that are coming from a unique background, that isn't bringing a perspective to our space right now. That's one of the reasons why we elevate, and we're working with Angel, and I love Angel doing a show. Angel had just done a couple of pre-recorded videos, and we're like, I gotta have him in this. That, like, he's got fire. I've seen this guy on Twitter. I know that what he's got to say and that he can bring it. And it's just elevating guys like that, and Chris Legion, and bringing people like Rob Durden and Misty together now. Misty being part of INN, and Tara was a co-founder. There's so many amazing people around. And not just within INN. We've got Yeti and Snow Himbo and Big Mad Crab, who's in the chat. Love you, Big Mad Crab, who does all our thumbnails, and Jesse Jett. I mean, we cover a tremendous range of people, of backgrounds, of economic situations, of between parents and single, and age ranges, where we are in life. It's been so rewarding to be a part of, and I think it's still just beginning, and it's a lot of fun to do. I literally do this 7 days a week. It makes my wife crazy. I will tell you that right now. She yells at me and says, "How come you do this all day, every day? Another stream tonight, really? Another thing tonight, really?" Yes, really, because this is important stuff, and not enough people are doing it. So if you have a voice, if you have the ability to do this, put it out there. Get off the sidelines. Do this, please. There are people that are out there that are willing to help. Start a Substack. Write on Substack. JB does that. I love what JB does on Substack. I'm so proud of you for doing that. Although Substack's starting to get infiltrated with some shit libs there too. Look, we have to counter that. We have to counter that and be the anti-imperialist and be the loud voices that say, hey, look, there's other people there. I just wrote an article about how Substack is starting to get taken over and amplify corporate media voices that failed on CNN, and here they come to Substack, because Substack's a cool place that we've built up as independents, anti-corporate, and they're celebrating it. It's like, guys, what are we doing? Okay. So you got a couple stories you want to cover, right?
Of course, we're going to be getting into that really quick, and I just wanted to thank you for jumping into your story and how it's developed over time. That really means a lot, and I'm glad to be able to get to know you a little bit better and allow my audience to get to know you and the rest of INN just a little bit better, so that they can also tune in to you. And by the way, just to let everybody know, the link tree for Indie News Network is also in the description as well. And actually, let me share it also in the chat, just in case some of you guys do not have it, so that you guys are well aware and up to date, and you guys can catch some of these shows, especially ones like How Did We Miss That, and other shows on INN, so that you're abreast of some things that you may not catch on independent media as easily. So thank you so very much. It's in the chat as well. So one of the
also
things
INN.net. So sorry, INN.network is the network one. The one that you put in there is for my stuff that I do with Substack and everything else. But INN is the network one. INN.network. You can find everyone there and all the channels. So the other shows that we do are like Nobody Wants to Work Anymore. I do that with the Snow Himbo because I've been looking for a job. So how do we showcase that all the crap that you have to go through in looking for a job. And actually, he just got one. So just find out the shows over there. So sorry, go ahead.
No. It's all good. And so just so that everybody has not already, please make sure to like the stream if you have not, because that pushes me out into the algorithm. And so I would like to make sure that, people make sure to like the stream. And as if you have not already, then if you guys have not, like I said before, you guys can go to Indie Left Substack, as well as you can go to my Substack as well. If you guys would like to get email notifications, because those are also really important. And so, yes, so I just want to make sure that we show what we're going to be talking about today, just so that people are aware of what's going on. So we have two stories that we're going to be going over today. The first story is having to do with RFK Jr. I'm sorry. The second story, our primary story, has to do with RFK Jr. So we'll be covering that in just a little bit, but you have no choice. So this is what we're going to be covering as our primary story, just in a little bit. And so I cannot wait to get into this, because this is something that I saw last week with that everybody is pretty much saying no duh. So I can't wait to get into that. But the story we're going to be covering next is you're screwed. So this is to anybody that's living in Florida that has not been aware of what Ron DeSantis is doing, has done regarding the law, and how this is really affecting working people who have suffered, especially in regards to natural disasters like a recent hurricane that we just had. So I would like to get into that. So let me say this, right? As far as Florida is concerned, immigrants coming to Florida is as American as apple pie and macaroni and cheese. Immigrant builders are now staying away from Florida, particularly undocumented immigrant builders and construction workers. Florida is already starting to feel the DeSantis law with natural disasters in buildings. And to be honest with you, that article that I shared with you a little bit earlier, not sure if you got a chance to get into it, but we're going to get into it anyway. This has been one that is maybe you can say an unintended consequence, or maybe an intended consequence, who knows? But this is out of the Orlando Sentinel. It says immigrant workers who help rebuild after storms fear coming to Florida over DeSantis law. And so we just had a hurricane over the last couple of weeks. I think it's Hurricane Idalia. I think that's how you pronounce the name. And so it starts off talking about how, somebody named Javier, who is from Honduras, came to help do construction and rebuilding over the Gulf Coast. And so now he's afraid to come to Florida because of the new law. I'm going to start here. It says he doesn't plan on coming to Florida even after Hurricane Idalia made landfall in the Big Bend area, killing at least 3 people, demolishing homes, and leaving hundreds of thousands without power. The reason: a state law that came into effect July 1st and enacts a series of immigration-related restrictions. It requires hospitals that take Medicaid to ask about immigration status on intake forms, mandates employers with 25 or more workers to use the federal E-Verify program to check if new hires can work in the U.S., and makes it a felony to drive an undocumented person into Florida, among other measures. Now, just as an aside to Indy, if you want to comment on anything that I'm reading, please feel free to stop me and just, make your comment. But yeah, so I find this to be very interesting.
Well, it's really sad that this kind of law, because they want to go through they want to use the federal E-Verify platform, right? So, anybody, that means that a lot of people that could potentially do that, they're not in the system, or they couldn't get through the system, so therefore they're not going to now show up when they may have before. And I think that's a lot of what they're talking about here, right?
Yeah, basically.
Hmm.
He also reflects on, his feelings. Says most of us want to travel, but for fear that for going and working for doing something honest, they want to detain us like delinquents. Nobody wants to leave or risk themselves. And says the Resilient Force, a labor organizing group that advocates for disaster workers, said it surveyed most of its membership, about 2,000 workers, composed of mostly undocumented immigrants and some natural-born citizens. Through virtual chats, one-on-one conversations, and in-person meetings, the organization found that more than half of its members don't want to come to Florida, still recovering from Ian and Idalia and facing the looming threat of hurricane season because they fear the new state immigration law Governor DeSantis signed in May. So they're basically scared to come here and to help us rebuild because of the law that Ron DeSantis signed into law a couple of months ago. And I mean, you already started speaking about this, but what does this, because as Florida goes, some other states may go in the same direction. I'm thinking primarily of places like Texas. What type of implications do you think this could be on a more national scale?
I think it could be a shortage of imported workers, which is going to jack up the price of local workers, first of all, for homes, for rebuilding projects, as well as, stretch thin the availability of the best of quality builders, because you've got quality engineers, quality electricians, quality carpenters, and all other skilled workers coming in from all over the country who now will not be. So you'll see a lot of that. That's a big concern to Florida residents, on top of the fact that it may take even longer to recover and rebuild because you don't have as many hands working together simultaneously.
Yeah. This goes into a new subheading. It says a newer workforce. It says the responder and recovery workforce has to scale up during crises such as hurricanes and floods because disasters exceeded the local capacity to deal with the incident. That was from Tim Frazier, who is the faculty director of Georgetown University Emergency and Disaster Management Program. But one of the main obstacles in emergency management is having enough people to respond to a disaster. This is what you just said earlier. And nonprofits and volunteers, along with local community resources, have often made up for the shortages. As a result of climate change, these disaster cycles are year-round, not seasonal, and our gap in human capital is becoming more difficult to manage and difficult to overcome. So this really just makes it, exactly as you said, a more difficult progression for us to recover from these natural disasters. And it is basically, my argument is not necessarily to have quote unquote open borders, but the thing is that by not allowing immigrants who have actually been coming into this country and doing work for well over 100 years, now we're stopping them from coming in just because of a documentation status and basically saying, well, you can't be here based on what? Crime? Based on what? It just feels like it's a discrimination based on some xenophobic tropes, when in reality, if you want to base it on other factors like pay, if you want to base it on other factors like exploitation, things like that, then focus on the reason why they're exploited instead of them coming in. I might have some people that might disagree with me on that, but that's what it feels like.
I mean, they're here. But look, wasn't DeSantis bloating immigrants on planes and sending them to Martha's Vineyard? And was that Greg Abbott in Texas? I thought DeSantis did that too. He's he's had a very anti-immigrant type of position for sure, at least anti-illegal quote unquote immigrant, because of what's been happening at our border and with our economic policies and with our military policies that are causing all kinds of battles, south of our border, that are causing these buildups on the border, that are causing illegal crossings. Our immigration system is completely messed up, and it's not allowing for, look, when Trump was in office, wasn't there like no immigration for like a year or something like that from Mexico? It was like net negative. We were actually exporting people to Mexico, if I remember, for a year or two. So yeah, I could understand not wanting to be there. I did read the article, and the Orlando Sentinel, that they had a lot of good points. They're definitely anti-DeSantis, and they have a bias, but they're absolutely right in the fact that these policies have real world implications.
Yeah. So I just want to go over this video really quick, and there's some other points that I want to make, because I think it's important that we get the scope of why these things are happening the way they are, and it goes into that. So let me share my screen really quick, because I think this is a lot of times when people talk about immigration, they just think of it as a one-dimensional issue, when I honestly think that this is a multi-dimensional issue that we need to tackle. And I would like to do a little bit of that with you here so that we can talk about this. Sure. But let's start off with this video.
Tonight, a new law is set to upend an entire way of life for many immigrants in Florida. One of them is Jesus, a farm worker for 18 years. He left Mexico searching for work and a better life. But now, as one of Florida's estimated 775,000 undocumented immigrants, he faces an incredibly difficult decision: either leave or wait until the state forces him to.
Now, one thing I just want to mention, as well, as a lot of people will go, well, these documented workers, they're coming from Mexico. It's like they may be coming through Mexico, but a lot of them are coming from Mexico. A lot of them are actually coming from Honduras, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Venezuela, and so on and so forth. So not all of them are Mexican. And everybody,
Panama.
Some people are just like, oh, they're Mexicans. I'm like, no, they're not. In fact, why would I come from a country? Why would I leave a country that actually has universal health care, and they're actually doing better in some metrics than the United States?
Right. They just, they've got AMLO as their president. They seized the lithium. They just made a thing to re-seize the lithium. They're joining BRICS. It's not all sunshine and roses. Look, they've got cartels. There's issues there too. But if you're a citizen, I mean, yeah, you have to look at what are the costs here. What are the costs of living to emigrate to the United States? You got to think about what kind of conditions they're willing to leave and endure to come here, and why they're. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, of course. Let's continue.
Telling me he'll work as long as he can here until it's time to grab his stuff and go back to Mexico, adding he has no idea what is going to happen. He's in limbo because Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a law as a way to crack down on employers that are hiring undocumented workers, requiring them to use an online database to verify legal status, banning local governments from issuing IDs to the undocumented, and requiring hospitals that accept Medicaid to ask patients about their immigration status.
That's pretty messed up about the Medicaid with immigration status. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but that feels pretty messed up.
Well, they want to be able to deport them after they give them health care and fix them up and send them out. That's what they want to do. It's terrible.
Yeah. It just feels disheartening to me. But
the move's creating panic.
What the law has created is an environment of fear where people believe, that they are at risk
Studies show immigrants make up 35% of Florida's booming construction industry, but we don't know how many of those are undocumented, while an estimated 47% of the people working Florida fields are undocumented. The Florida Policy Institute estimating losing those workers could mean an economic loss of nearly $13 billion per year and a drop of 10% of the state's total workforce. Fidencio is one of the many migrant workers here in the farming community of Homestead, and he says the consequences of the law will be felt by everyone like him.
I love how it's all about profit, right?
DeSantis is going to be breaking up families, and it's up to God what happens next. It's something even Florida's business leaders are worried about. The people in charge of massive infrastructure projects like Daniel Kotze, whose company is tasked with developing the new Miami World Center, a 27-acre, $4 billion project, a worksite employing as many as 15,000 workers.
And it's not just in construction. You're going to see it in all types of service industries. I have a friend that owns a chain of restaurants. He says half of his staff is leaving.
Kotze says new immigration reform is needed to fix the problem.
So as far as the amount of workers that are being diminished is, we're feeling it already, especially as far as food prices. So this is exacerbating what they like to call the inflation that we are experiencing, which I like to call price gouging. But this also gives some of these agriculture and construction businesses a reason to inflate the prices even further and make it even harder for us to be able to afford the necessary goods here in the state of Florida. So I feel like we're going to end up being like New York, California, and Hawaii soon as far as prices go, because they're not allowing for more workers to be able to be here. But at the same time, I'm kind of divided on it just a little bit, because I don't want to see workers become exploited. But at the same time, I don't want our prices to skyrocket. You know what I'm saying? It's they kind of put you in a between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're trying to gentrify the entire state this way by making it too expensive. They're pricing everybody out. Look, Reef had to evacuate for this storm too, and it affects everyone in Florida. And yeah, you want to eliminate a third of your workforce and as well as the imports, that's gonna hurt. And they've got a bad rep. I know that there's been a lot of studies done and articles written by Popular Information and other outlets about what DeSantis has been doing in Florida, not just with this, but also with education and trying to take on Disney. And there's a lot of issues with Riverboat Ron. So, going all the way back to Gitmo, they call him Gitmo Ron. I know Reef did a story about his time at Guantanamo. So, he's the punitive is the point with him. The punishment is the point, and I think that they're again trying to. I don't know. It's not good, whatever it is.
Yeah, definitely. Let's continue.
At the end of the day, you wouldn't have the illegal immigration problem if you didn't have a lot of people that were facilitating this in our country.
The governor's office telling NBC News SB 1718 counteracts the effects of illegal immigration in Florida, adding any business that exploits this crisis by employing illegal aliens instead of Floridians will be held accountable.
Part of me calls bullshit, because this necessarily isn't just, this just puts them more underground. It doesn't necessarily get rid of the problem. And this feels like a Band-Aid to me. And I'll tell you guys why in a minute. But this feels like just a big Band-Aid on a gaping wound that really, somebody like Ron DeSantis doesn't want to cut off the issue right at the source. He just wants to cut it off. He just wants to cut it off at a more surface level. So That's my
something he can campaign on. That he got rid of this and he cleaned up that, and he's tough on immigration, and he's he's pandering to a base. Let's call it for what it is. Very often the Republican base is not looking to give a hand up to immigrants, especially ones that don't legally go through the system, that they've made absolutely impossible for anyone to actually go through the system.
Yeah. Once I get to my explanation, I'm actually going to be proposing a way to actually curtail undocumented immigration from a way more humanitarian way. So stay tuned for that, and it'll be coming up in a couple minutes. But I actually have some notes written that I actually want to get into. And yeah, this is... God, DeSantis is an idiot. I'm sorry. I can't hold my tongue right now. He's a fucking idiot. Let's get into it. Let's continue.
But advocates looking out for those migrants and Florida's economy say the new law will be a devastating blow to Florida's crucial industries.
A lot of these businesses in the agriculture industry are going to have to grapple with the idea of closing shop.
Not too many people are in line for those jobs. So there's going to be a big void.
Governor DeSantis.
So here's my thing. All right. Why don't American citizens take these jobs? Why don't documented American citizens, why don't they work in the agricultural sector, especially like these undocumented immigrants? Because they know, we all here know that immigrants are exploited, and we don't want the same thing for ourselves. Let's put it out there. Let's put it all on the line, baby. Mm-hmm. This is why here in my neighborhood, I like to call my neighborhood Little Port-au-Prince, because it is a massive Haitian population in my area. Some of them are undocumented. They came here. And some of them work in the hotels as people who do cleaning and things like that. Some of them are undocumented, right? They want to be paid. American citizens want to be paid worthy of doing such hard work, and they're not under the threat of deportation because they're citizens. This is why workers need to run this nation. Workers see themselves in the immigrants and know that they're here because they want to live a good life and provide for their families. This is why solidarity with all workers is crucial. Absolutely. And the thing is that a lot of times people will go, well, they're just coming here out of, because they just want to come. Like, why do they want to come here? Because they actually want a better life. So if they want a better life, why aren't we willing to facilitate it? And it's not just a easy, they just want to skip the line, right? It's not just that, and let me continue because it actually goes to my next point.
DeSantis, who's running for president, sees the immigration law as a blueprint for the entire country.
We've established here in Florida a blueprint for success that other states can follow.
Leaving the path ahead for Jesus and others just like him unclear as they hope to find a new home where they can build a new life.
So why do they want to come here for a new life in the first place? Andy, what is your reason why? What is your explanation as to why they want to come here in the first place?
Well, have we economically sanctioned their country? Have we destabilized their leader and caused a coup at the top, which then set their country back years or decades? Have we saddled their country with an IMF loan that may further fracture and cause division and cause poverty within the country? And then is there rife corruption at the top of all those countries when all the U.S. money starts coming in and the puppets that they start to install that are friendly to capitalistic enterprises that allow the U.S. to come in and rape their resources? I wonder how they end up here. I can't imagine.
So let me go to my notes. So why did they come here to build a new life in the first place? Many don't know the answer to that question, unlike my guest Indy here, who just laid it out. Immigrants have been traveling to the southern border for work for well over 100 years. But when they came, they left when the work was done, right? Once our border laws became more strict, it forced them to stay inside of our country instead of traveling back to their country. So they came over, did their work, made their money, and then travel back. Now, because of our immigration laws, they can't go back so easily. So they're like, well, I might as well just stay, right? Also, the process to become a citizen is long and expensive. It's also difficult when you're experiencing hardship in your country and you're trying to escape for fear of your life. So many are refugees that are coming into this country. But now not even a refugee can work in Florida for fear of being sent back to the country they fled because of their undocumented status. Many have to flee their countries because of how destabilized it is due to U.S. foreign policy. This destabilization causes government corruption, poverty, and crime to skyrocket, forcing families to flee and to make long, dangerous trips to a nation that doesn't even want them there. So, what's the answer?
Empathy.
Sorry, go ahead.
Empathy. Start looking at it from their perspective. Why are they coming here, and how do we help them once they get here? That's where we got to start. It's, and it's so funny that so many of them claim and profess to be religious and Christians because that is the most Christian thing to do. So feeding the poor and the hungry and the needy, right? I think that they talk about that somewhere in the book, right? You go to church every Sunday.
Yeah. That's a great point. And just to add, workers coming together to implement more unionization, at the very least, unionization. But at least you can push hard for worker cooperatives so that workers can collectively own the businesses and operate them democratically. This increases pay that workers get and helps improve the material conditions for those of us who are citizens, at least. A co-op construction company or a farm in agriculture could be more valuable, and more citizens will be able to work these jobs and they wouldn't face exploitation. We also could collectively change the laws to be more fair for immigrant workers and citizens. If we get rid of the exploitation, both citizens and immigrants could have a fair deal. We don't have to spend billions of dollars of public dollars trying to detain undocumented immigrants. That money could be better used on infrastructure, right? Also, this is why paying attention to foreign policy is so important. It indirectly affects our rebuilding efforts here in Florida because it is exacerbating an issue that was pretty innocuous over 100 years ago. This is why systemic changes are necessary. If you change the foreign policy and you uplift the nations and we allow them for sovereignty and self-determination, they can thrive. Here's the point. People who live in a place that is thriving don't leave. They may travel to visit, but they don't leave, hardly, because they have it good. Solving the immigration issue starts at the source. And so, just like you said, when we have done these horrible things to these nations like Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Chile, and the like, then what happened? It destabilized those nations. Those nations become more depressed. And then the people who are suffering in those nations go, it's a hellhole here. I need to go someplace better. And so let me grab my family, make the dangerous trek up through Mexico and then into the United States, where I may just be detained. But even if I'm detained, I'm still better off. Does it make sense?
And let's not forget the family separations, the forced family separations that were put in place by the same type of monsters that are running your state now. Mm-hmm. And as well as the Trump administration, they encourage it. The punishment is the point. they're sadists in my mind. They get pleasure out of this nonsense, which is gross. It also jacks up their costs, and it's disgusting. It really is. It's union busting is disgusting. Shitting on immigrants is equal. It's so it makes me so angry. I swear I can't even speak.
Of course. And a lot of times, people will talk about, oh my God, we have to get them at the southern border, when in reality, the southern border is not the problem. It's the airports that's the problem, because the people who are coming here undocumented are people who come here under a work visa. They stay long past their work visa, and they're still here without leaving. That's the thing. And the thing is that you don't see them going to the airports to stop it. They only go to the southern border because the people are brown. The people who are actually staying long past their visa are actually coming from white European countries, or they are privileged coming from brown countries because they're allowed to, because they have these degrees and they have this education, which makes them look better. And the United States is like, oh, you got an education? Come over. Anybody who doesn't have a formal higher education, you can't come, because we don't want poor people, which is classist in itself.
100%.
So, that's the issue that a lot of times people don't want to talk about, is that most of the immigrants that are coming here that aren't documented are staying because their visa status has ran out. And so a lot of times, this is why people are like, well, we just got to build a wall. A wall ain't going to do crap. Right? So I'm going to share this video in the chat. I can't play it because of copyright reasons. However, it's also good to see how Adam Conover, he had a show called Adam Ruins Everything. He actually talks about how border walls don't stop illegal immigration, and that goes over the history of undocumented immigration and how it actually started off. So if you guys want to take a look at that on your own time, I encourage you to do so. It is really good to actually go over that. But ultimately, it's when we say workers of the world unite, when I say workers of the world unite, I'm also talking about people who may be undocumented too. Because they're being exploited because they're undocumented.
Right.
And they're in fear of that immigration status. And then,
why? For capitalism. For capitalism.
Yeah, and then they get used in order to to pay less for the work. And so then guess what? Number one, they get exploited because they're not getting paid what they should be. And then number two, we get locked out because we refuse to be exploited. So it needs to be a coming together of all of us against the corporate dictators in order to say, no, you're going to treat us all equally, and you're going to pay even undocumented workers a livable wage, just like you pay us. It's not going to be one class over another.
Yeah. They don't have this major problem in most other countries around the world. They have figured it out. And number one, they have a legitimate process to have people come in and work there and live there. And it's not exorbitantly expensive. And the process doesn't take close to a decade if you're lucky enough to have the resources to be able to withstand that. And then you're getting, think about the people that have to have these immigration meetings and hearings and regular check-ins, but they've got full-time jobs, right? And they've got to, sometimes they're not able to skip work to make these things. And all of a sudden they're in violation because they couldn't leave their job because otherwise they get fired. They don't have an income, and then they can't maintain and sustain themselves. Like, the whole system is the issue. And I'm with you, man.
And they also pay taxes.
Yep.
Because people be like, well, they don't pay a payroll tax. It's like, no, but they do pay a sales tax. Right?
Yeah.
They do pay
on
for
everything.
gas, right? These things that some people just don't get. Undocumented construction worker comes in and he has to go to Payless just to buy some work boots. Well, he just paid taxes on those work boots. And that taxes actually go to your local economy.
Remember, they also don't have health care. They're doing this dangerous work, illegal status without any kind of formal health care.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then they get to the hospital. God forbid they do get injured on the job. And the first thing that hospital does is says, tell us your immigration status. Yeah.
Wow. So this is why it's so important for us workers to all come together and to leave that xenophobic thinking of, well, they're taking our jobs out the door. Because the thing is that it's not them that's taking our jobs. It's these corporate dictators being so willing to give our jobs over to people just out of their desperation. So the key is to take the desperation away, as well as take the power from the corporate dictators away and put it in the hands of us workers.
I want to keep us starving, desperate, and fighting each other. That's how they end up profiting. And we blue and red fight each other while they run away with the green is one of my favorite phrases to use. And they're doing it here too. Because who's going to end up winning in the end are the capitalists, are the construction companies that will charge more money for the same work because they have to pay more. But they're not going to eat into their own profits. They'll continue to maintain the profitability. They'll just pass on the costs to the rest of the community most of the time.
Exactly. So thank you so very much. That was that story here out of Florida. Thank you so very much to everybody. If you guys have not, please make sure to like the stream as well. Because that pushes me out into the algorithm. So thank you so very much for that. And I just wanted to also thank you guys for, if anybody who has subscribed to my Substack, then please go ahead. If you guys would like to, you guys can go to jaybefaunt.substack.com. Now we are going to go to our primary story today. The primary story here.
Funny that you say the word primary, because the Democrats aren't really having a primary, are they, JB?
Oh, gosh. I don't think we are. I don't think, well, I
still see Booby.
I don't think the DNC is. So let me share.
Am I frozen?
No, you're not.
I think it's frozen. Okay.
No, but you have no choice. No soup for you. So let's go. So Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is fed up with the Democratic Party. He's sick and tired of being sick and tired. Hey, Indy, remember the Jacksons' An American Dream?
Sure.
Okay. Remember when Katherine Jackson found out that Joe Jackson was cheating on her?
Of course. That
part? She said, Joe,
of course.
You a liar and a cheat, and I don't want you. No, I don't want you. I don't want you. I don't want you. I don't want you no more. Remember that part?
Dude, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
That is what RFK Jr. is going through right now. Boy, oh boy, let's go. Oh, Lord, let's get into it because this is some tea. All right, so let me see. Do I have it up now? Okay. All right. Because this is hilarious. This is hilarious. Okay. I'm sure you've already seen this, but some people didn't. Oh, gosh. Let's roll the beautiful being footage for all the people to see. And I'm going to be honest with you. I kind of feel bad for RFK, but I don't feel bad because it's kind of like, I feel like, it's one of those I told you so type of deals. And it's like, yo, we told him so. So let me share my screen really quick, just so that people can see exactly what I'm talking about. And I want to get your reactions to this as well, because this really needs to be talked about. So we'll go over that really quick. So here's RFK.
It's pretty clear that the DNC does not want a primary. I don't want to say that they want a coronation, but that's, I think that that's a fair way to put it, actually.
No shit, Sherlock. I'm hot.
Cue Simone Sanders.
I'm hot. Look, let me tell you something. All right. We told him. Indy. We told him, right?
Oh, everybody told him. First of all, we said, go back to the Beck lawsuit, 2016. Then look at what happened to us all as Bernie supporters in 2020 and realize that unless the Democratic Party wants you to be a part of their primary and is going to, they'll accept you. Otherwise, they're just going to freeze you out. They're going to ignore you. They're going to keep you off corporate TV. They're going to exclude you from their debates. But in this case, they have precedent. And I have to say, and I've been yelling for weeks, months. When was the last time an incumbent president, whether he's old, decrepit, demented or not, was challenged within his own party and primaried by a substantial challenger while he's sitting in office and running for re-election? The answer is like 1968, Lyndon Johnson. All right. And that's in both parties, by the way. Anytime there's been an incumbent president running for re-election, he has gone unchallenged by his party. So, yeah, Booby, sorry, but that's already the precedent. And I love that you want to challenge Joe Biden because he's a terrible warmongering, creepy loser, but they're not going to abandon ship at this point from their party, and they're not going to break ranks and destroy precedent for a Kennedy that they've been smearing as an anti-vaxxer for a decade. Sorry, man, that's what they've been doing.
Yep.
They don't want you. They don't want you.
Let's continue to watch this train wreck in slow motion. Let's continue.
They're doing. They're essentially they're fixing the process so that it makes it almost impossible to have democracy function. They're effectively disenfranchising the Democratic voters from having any choice in who becomes president or who becomes the Democratic nominee. So two of the things they've done.
This could have been a report from 4 months ago when we actually talked about this initially. If he would have said this 4 months ago, this wouldn't be such a big deal. Savvy Sav says Ted Kennedy had a good chance against Carter, but he screwed up a huge interview and killed a woman. Damn. Yes.
Well,
thank you so much, Savvy.
Yes, he did that. The Democrats primaried Jimmy Carter in 1980 because of Reagan, and they didn't think that he was going to, that with the hostage thing that they had any chance. And Ted Kennedy wasn't going to be Reagan anyway. But anyway, no, it's a good point.
Yeah. And Bill Bradley, good point. He says all private companies have the right to refuse association. That includes political parties. So thank you so very much. So let's continue. Oh gosh, this.
Well, I guess some people have to learn the hard way.
Look. You know what I say to this whole thing, and okay, so I hate to sound like I'm mocking RFK Jr., but I feel like Piglet from Winnie the Pooh. Oh, dear! Like, dude, what is the hell is the matter with you? Like, we've been telling you. Never mind, because he's not going to listen to us. He's not going to listen. And guess what? It's not going to. Let's go. I'm frustrated.
Today is they've moved the Iowa primary. They've made rules that if anybody campaigns in Iowa or any candidate sets foot in the state of Iowa or sets foot in the state of New Hampshire, then none of the votes that are cast for that candidate will be tallied. In other words, any delegate that I win in New Hampshire or Iowa would go instead to the president.
What is that the definition of, Indy?
55 counties in the state of West Virginia, 2016. That's what that tells me. You weren't paying attention, Booby. Where were you?
Booby, pay attention. Because if you look at it, it's like, wait a minute. Doesn't that sound like rigging?
Well,
wait, it's 2023, right? 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. 7 years. 7 years of rigging. And for some odd reason, that seems to go right over Bobby's head.
yeah.
Hang on. Hold up. Let me. Bobby, if you need help, blink twice. Blink twice if you need help.
He doesn't need help. He's got plenty of backers. He can go hang out with Shmuley. Like
oh, Shmuley. All right.
And now they're trying to change it so that if I campaign in New Hampshire, that none of the votes cast for me in Georgia will count. And that's significant because it's hard to win the nomination without Georgia.
What is
so
what is the
rigging
logic?
Well, they're rigging it so that it, effectively, we're looking at the tabulations now that look like if you add up all the super delegates that they control and all of the automatic delegates that just go to the party and go to the president, I would have to win almost 80% of all of the states in order to beat President Biden, even if he only wins 20%.
And yet you continue on. So what is your strategy then in light of this for defeating?
That's the question that everybody and their mama has been asking, and we haven't not gotten a clear answer.
Nope.
What, pray tell, Robert, is the answer if you know the game is rigged? Are you going to get up from the table and walk away? Wait. Let's get the answer. And a 1, and a 2, and a
President Biden.
These rules will not be finalized until September 14th, and
2 days from now. 2 days. 1, 2. Unos dos. Hi. Wait. Hold up. He said, well, this will be done by the 14th. That's in 2 days. Do you actually hold up before I move on? Indy, do you think that they're actually going to change it? And so, oops, my bad, in 2 days?
Oh, of course. I mean, because they totally don't want Joe Biden as their nominee, and they're going to set it up any way possible so that Bobby can have a fair fight. I mean, even with a fair quote unquote fight, I'm still looking at who's back, and I think that they're looking at who's been funding. Where are the max donations been coming from for each of the campaigns? And it's one of the things that we've always done at Indie Left, and it was looking at exposing corruption and following the money. And Popular Information did a great article a couple months ago, totally biased against RFK. And his thing is that this is an astroturfed right-wing campaign that's trying to sow division within the Democratic Party to weaken Joe Biden in the end for the general so that Trump can eat him alive. I personally don't think you need to weaken Joe Biden. That he does a plenty good job on his own without Republicans having to infiltrate through Booby Kennedy. But the fact that Kennedy's been appearing on Fox TV and in the more conservative part, trying to appeal to a different audience that is not the typical Democratic Party base also tells me that's where his money's coming from. So you've got to look at that. The Democrats don't want anything to do with that. I mean, while it is a uniparty, they still have their donors, their backers, their funders that they have to support. Sometimes they back both horses, but they don't. We'll see.
We shall see. Definitely. Oh gosh, I'm. Look, I'm having to pause a lot more than I thought. Jeez Louise. All right, let's continue.
We've written the DNC protesting. I mean, there's some really wild things that they're now considering, including forcing me to actually pay for the primaries. And
if you think that's wild, you should have seen what Donna Brazile did and what Debbie Wasserman Schultz did. Like, holy crap, Bobby. Jeez.
Primaries, and their logic is that they don't need a primary because they already have a candidate, and therefore I'm costing them all this money, and that money should be paid for by me and maybe Marianne Williamson. So it's not, it's a process that is rigged, and we live at a time in American history when a lot of Americans think that democracy is broken, that the political system is rigged, and that there's not really any democracy. And unfortunately, the DNC is taking a lot of steps that confirm that outlook. If
the decision holds for the current, sort of primary structure with the DNC, what is the route to victory for you against President Biden?
Oh, so this is her asking the same question a second time.
Mm-hmm. Because he didn't answer it the first time.
Yeah, she asked it already, and he didn't answer the question. So now it's, so what's your path to victory now? Because you know this.
Savvy saying David Sachs is paying him.
That means you didn't answer the question. Andy?
Nope. David Sachs from Call-In was what Stabby's saying was the guy who founded Call-In. He's also PayPal Mafia, part of the Peter Thiel army is the person that one of the large benefactors, but far from the only one. Look, he's definitely getting AIPAC funded and AIPAC coaching. We know this. So what's his answer?
Oof, thank you for that. Let's see what Bobby says.
If the DNC is going to rig it so that it is simply impossible for anybody to challenge President Biden, then I need to look at other alternatives, because I can't go back to the people support me and to my donors and say, I'm in this to make a point. I need to show them a road to victory.
What kind of alternatives would you be exploring, Mr. Kennedy?
Well, I don't know exactly, because I want to see what the DNC does.
Black people in the chat, black people know exactly what I just said. My eyes. Like,
Booby got a JB lead in. Uh-oh.
They know. Sabby already knows that. Look, she already knows exactly what I just said with my eyes. Good God. Well, I just got to see what the DNC got. My brother and Thor, they already showed you what they're going to do.
See, if he had any guts, he'd have run as independent to start with. And if he actually wanted to challenge and win and shake up the system, he doesn't need either party. He's got a big enough name. He's got enough money behind him. Ballot access wise, they could get people on there. He could potentially immediately walk into, say, the Libertarian Party and take over. There's even thought that, and Jimmy Dore said it, I don't know why he doesn't run as a Republican. That field seems pretty open, potentially. It seems more open to his messaging in a lot of ways. It didn't really make any sense to walk into the one place that didn't want you. And yet you're complaining and crying. Now, I think part of it was to further prove to everybody else and to kind of put himself up on the cross and say, hey, I'm going to sacrifice and show you guys that no matter who it is, even a legacy Kennedy with big money that's willing to challenge the system, they're not going to let him anywhere near that nomination. I think that's what his supporters are really, they want to see him up on the cross. And Booby is no savior. He's no saint. He's no saint. He endorsed Hillary Clinton 4 times, twice for governor, twice for senator, twice for president. He's got Bill Clinton endorsements. He sat next to Bill during the funeral for one of them or somebody's ceremony. And then he endorsed Joe Biden. He is an establishment preacher. Yeah. You really think that this is a guy that's going to take on the establishment?
Stay tuned, folks. Let's finish this up.
I want to see if they make it if they make it a fair contest. And I'm not asking it to be 100% fair, but I
wait, what?
Fair.
Wait, hold on.
100% fair.
Wait, you just said you're not looking for it to be 100% fair. Who the hell says that, Bobby? Who says that? Look, I'm not looking for you to be 100% faithful, just some bit faithful. Just please, only cheat on me when I don't know it. Don't cheat on me when I'm looking. I'm about to walk off my own show. I am literally about to walk off. This is, look, I'm going to say it like Sabby. This is ridiculous. Exactly, Sabby. Because the thing is, like, why in the world would you not want it to be 100% fair? Wait, where's Ashton Kutcher? Am I being punked over here? Am I being
CIA?
Punked?
What? Ashton Kutcher, CIA? What?
Yeah. Don't let those good looks fool you. He's a Fed. All right, I'm trying to finish this, and Bobby just keeps ramming his head against the wall. Jeez Louise, Bobby, make it stop, bruh.
But I'm asking that there at least be, a chance that it be plausible for somebody else to win other than their, chosen anointed candidate.
You know what he reminds me of? He reminds me of Steve Urkel saying, Laura, is there a chance that we'll actually be together? And she basically says, in another universe, and there's no other people left on the planet, then yeah. And then Steve Urkel goes,
maybe.
So there is a chance. That's basically the same thing. He's like looking for look. This is look, I'm gonna tell you right now, because I got some stuff. Let me show y'all something. Because I got this video, right? And here's my issue. If he actually paid attention to what was being said 4 months ago, 4 months ago, and I'm going to show y'all, 4 months ago, this was said, then he wouldn't have to be going through all this heartache. He either could have just dropped out instead of getting all that money from them people, or he could have just left the party. This was said 4 months ago. Roll that beautiful beam footage. Bree, take it away.
Post report, the DNC has decided it will not hold any primary debates. This despite two official challengers, of course, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Marianne Williamson, who pull at roughly 14 and 5% respectively. According to recent data, leftists like former Ohio State Senator Nina Turner are calling the decision undemocratic. I'm inclined to agree.
Yeah, this is, what is he afraid of? Look, again, and with all respect to Marianne Williamson, who's been a guest on our show, and we look forward to having RFK Jr. on our show as well sometime in the future. We've already reached out to his people. We're going to make that happen. Biden is overwhelmingly likely to be, I think even if you're a fan of Marianne or a fan of RFK Jr., you'd have to concede it's very likely he'll get the nomination again. So what is he worried about? What does he have to fear from engaging in the practice of democracy, sharing a stage with people who aren't polling like 1%? Those are some healthy numbers there.
Yeah, I would argue that the numbers make it more obvious how undemocratic the Democratic Party is being.
Exactly.
They also are fudging their numbers in a lot of ways. Those polls are all biased and terrible, and they call mostly older people and mostly people that are retired because working people aren't able to answer the phone when pollsters call. They're not getting their finger on the pulse. This is, lies, damn statistics with all this stuff, corporate media, and they've got stake in the horse race. But yes, the Democratic Party is undemocratic because they want to anoint their candidate. Sure. I'll use them to make that point. Sure.
Yep. I have a picture. Really, it's a GIF I want to show you guys. This is RFK Jr. This is RFK Jr. basically exactly when he arrives, to the Democratic primary. This is RFK Jr. when he gets to the primary. Like, hey, where y'all at? That's him. That's what it looks like to me. Now, I got a couple of things that I just wanted to share. Right now, let me make sure I have this up. If they did it to him, of course they're going to do it to other people, right? So let me share this because this actually is something that a lot of people seem to forget. People have very short memories. So here we go. This is out of the New York Times back in 2020. Remember this? It says Democratic leaders willing to risk party damage to stop Bernie Sanders. Interviews with dozens of Democratic Party officials, including 93 superdelegates, found overwhelming opposition to handing Mr. Sanders the nomination if he fell short a majority of delegates. It says House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Senator Chuck Schumer hear constant warnings from allies about congressional losses in November if the party nominates Bernie Sanders for president. Democratic House members shared their Sanders fears over text messaging chains. Bill Clinton on call with old friends, vents about the party getting wiped out in the general election, which we know that wouldn't have actually happened. It says dozens of interviews with Democratic establishment leaders this week show that they're not just worried about Mr. Sanders' candidacy, but also willing to risk inter-party damage to stop his nomination at the national convention in July if they get the chance.
That's when they freaked out. After Nevada, okay, I was dancing in the street, man. I was ready. I was making reservations for the inauguration. No candidate had ever won 3 of the first 4 states and not gone on to the nomination. You looked at the history, the precedent. He was leading. He was strong. He was dominant. Then Chris Matthews says something about hangings in Central Park, and Obama makes a couple of phone calls, and everybody drops out at once and loses their mind and endorses this clown.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are 3 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wanted this guy. Nobody wanted this guy. Just remember that. Nobody wanted this guy. But all of a sudden, he's the hero and the savior and the champion. And, you know, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. You know, like all the stuff. Or Reed, like, ignore it all. He's our guy. Like, no.
Mm-hmm.
Never been my guy.
Yep. And remember, the people who actually were in attendance, and I can remember this from memory, you had everybody, all the heavy hitters in the Democratic Party, including people like Pete Buttigieg, that were there, that were in unison trying to stop Bernie Sanders. You had Nancy Pelosi, Schumer, all of them. They all didn't want Bernie to be president, even though the people wanted Bernie to be president. So it doesn't matter what the people want. It's what they want at the Democratic Party. So yeah, that's exactly what's going on. They tried to push Bernie Sanders out, and they successfully did, actually.
No, they sure did. Not only did they push him out, they got him to endorse Joe and to basically abandon his entire movement, disband it, and look at where it's so fractured now. You know, you asked earlier about the state of the left, and a lot of people would say that their left, when they became left, was through the Bernie movement. And the answer is that the quote unquote left that we knew in 2020 doesn't exist. It's completely fractured. Some of us have gone completely anti-capitalist, anti-duopoly independent. Some of us have gone specifically to the Green Party to back a different party that's going to take on the duopoly. Some of them got sheep-herded with Bernie right back into the Democratic Party. They pushed some of them to the Republican Party because they saw how warmongering and controlling and identity politics focused the Democrats were, and said, I can't be part of that. I think that the quote-unquote 2020 left, the Bernie left, is scattered across the entire political universe. And then you've got the Gregs, politically homeless. They don't know where the hell they fit. They don't fit into anything.
Mm-hmm. And so here is how Truth Dig says DNC fraud suit exposes anti-democratic views in Democratic Party. So let's go over this. Says 9 months after losing the presidency, the Democratic Party is in dire need of a course correction. Grassroots enthusiasm for the party is far from robust. Despite incessant funding appeals and widespread revulsion from the Trump administration, the Democratic National Committee's fundraising is notably weak. And the latest DNC chair, Tom Perez, you know, the guy that sounds just like this, says sounds no more inspiring than his recent predecessors. Also, he needs a whole lozenge. He needs Hall's cough drops. But anyways, when Perez next to Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, it's a stark contrast between establishment cliches and progressive populism. And so basically, they are saying that, we actually do not need to obey the will of the people. We just need to go with whatever we think is correct. And that's that. So as far as we're concerned, like, there's nothing for us in regards to the Republican Party. I'm sorry, the Democratic Party. Sorry, that was a Freudian slip. But this is what was argued in the DNC fraud lawsuit by Bruce Spiva. And I know Sabby Sab, she brings this up all the time. But this is just to let people know that there is really no home for any voter who wants an actual democracy. And these are the things that he spoke of. Number one, and we'll go over these line by line. Number one says there's no such thing as a Democrat. The DNC just encourages people to vote for the Democratic Party. Andy, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, okay. It's a marketing scheme. It's a private corporation that markets itself and then pushes you and browbeats you and shames you into choosing their selected corporate funded candidate, representative.
Yeah. And so, as you said, there is, for instance, marketing, and I'll say it right out in front right now. Breaking points, Crystal, Kyle, and friends. These are really just marketing for the DNC with a independent left media veneer. That's basically what it is. And that's what we have been noticing over the last couple weeks. A lot of people have been waking up to that. Number two, it says, no one has any right to an expectation of a fair election. How draconian does that sound? It says, if the DNC wishes to select a candidate in the primaries instead of a free election process, that is their right.
It's literally like we could go into the back of a smoke-filled room, into a back room and smoke-filled, and come out, emerge with a candidate, and there's not much you can do about it. Which is why they created super delegates and all these other processes that allows them to rig the game and install their candidate by calling it official channels. But you know, I remember there was a guy that ran against Mark Warner a couple of years ago for Senate in Colorado. Basically, he sat down with someone and said, look, when you go to run for Congress or run for Senate, Chuck Schumer's going to sit down and go, okay, how much money you got? How much money can you raise? How much money can you bring to the table? How many millions? And it's like, I think it was Charles Booker actually was talking about how, you know, that they didn't want him basically because he couldn't bring enough money to the table, enough big money donors and enough bundlers and funders. And they went with the Trumper lady who went against Mitch McConnell. Remember that? A couple of years ago?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And so to me, this sounds kind of like when they're trying to elect a new pope. Like, y'all know when we tell you, when y'all see that smoke come out from the top of the Vatican, then that's how y'all know when we got a new pope. And this is going to be a new pope, whether you like it or not. Right? That's what it feels like.
That's how we got Joe Biden, isn't it?
Basically. So number 3 says donating money to Bernie Sanders doesn't mean you thought that the money was going to assist him to win the primary. You have no right to think the DNC was obligated to follow their own charter and internal policies about elections.
That to me was the biggest gaslight there is. You know, just no expectation that that one of the two major recognized political. Okay. You do you. Listen, man, I'm so sorry. I got to go grab my kids down from the school bus. Thank you so much to everybody. I love you all. IndieNews.network, INN.network, and IndieLeft.media. JB, we have to do this again sometime. You'll come and do a Friends of Indie Left. You'll come on INN News, or we'll do How Do We Miss That? But you're welcome anytime. Again, love you. Love the platform. Love the opportunity. And say goodbye to everybody in chat. But thank you so much. Talk to you soon, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much, Indy, for showing up. I'm sorry, time left me. I forgot that you had it cut off at 3:30. So let's continue. So the last one is discussion of any disputes with the DNC do not belong in a transparent process in a court of law. The DNC is a private association which should never be asked to engage in the discovery process or have to reveal any of its internal workings or strategies should they decide to select a candidate rather than allow a fair election of a candidate. So that means exactly what I've been saying for a while now, that the Democratic National Committee is a private organization, not a bureaucratic institution. So therefore, it does not require you to see the inner workings. You can't and don't have to see how the sausage is made. They're going to lock you out. And they do that. And they have the apparatus, they have the money to basically put forth whatever the candidate they want. And that's basically it. That's basically, it's like going to a store and you have a product and you have 2 customers there, and you're the 3rd customer, and you try to use your money to buy it, but they have made it so that they're always the 2 people at the front of the counter. And so even if you or a third party tries to put your money on the counter, they always push you back, and they put their money on the counter, and they get the product every single time. And so they say, well, if you really want this product, then you're going to have to give us the money so that we can choose the product for you. And you just can't get it. You can't get it for yourself. You can't acquire the power, the levers of government as a worker. That's exactly how they do it. They make it so that you're always locked out. You're banned. They put a barrier between the government and you. And then they'll say, well, we're Democrats and, we want to operate the government this way. And then Republicans are like, we want to operate the government this way. And it's a kayfabe. That's what it is. So that's just basically how our government works now. Anything else outside of that? They don't want. Because they put their person in power. You don't have a choice. And so when liberals talk about, oh, well, the Republican Party, they're anti-democratic because they'll do things like gerrymandering and all the like. While the gerrymandering and the anti-democratic moves by them are true, make no mistake that the Democratic Party does the exact same thing. They are also anti-democratic because they will rig their primaries so that people do not have a chance in hell in order to make it to the general election. So there's rigging on both sides. This is why people like myself and many others in independent media say, get out of both parties. This is why it is up to us to look in 2 different routes. 30 independent parties, as well as doing work on the ground, mutual aid, and building dual power outside of the levers of government, outside the levers of the Democratic and Republican parties, outside of the duopolies, so that we can actually form something better for ourselves. So then once we do that, we can actually enact more solid, concrete change on a fundamental level. And I think that's one of the biggest points that needs to be honed in on. And a lot of times people will go, well, we really don't have much else. Like, what are we really going to do? Like, all is lost. No, all is not lost. See, that's what they want you to think. They want you to think, well, you have to choose between one of these 2. Even just voting itself is the very least, the very smallest thing you can do. There's a 3rd and a 4th option. You see, here's what scammers will do. They'll say, well, you can either die by drowning or die by fire. Which one you want? They'll never present you a 3rd option out of the deal. Hell, I learned that in sales, baby. Never give them an out. Never give them a 3rd option where it's out of the question. Even though it's legitimate, even though it is actually an option, don't let them know about it. Oh, well, I can give you the protection plan at a discount. But you'll have to pay a little bit more, on the back end. I can either extend, the amount of months that you finance for, or you can get the protection. I can shorten it, but you have to get the protection. It's like one of the two. Either way, you still end up paying out the ass, right? But the third option is you just don't get the protection at all, and then you can just get the shorter pay period. And you can go online and actually look it up and see that it's actually for lesser and then demand a price match. But they don't know that third option. It's the same thing. You have the third option of a third party as well as getting out in the streets and actually helping and building your community. You literally have those options. The thing is, they don't want you to know. And then sometimes they'll say, you remember when Obama just goes, don't boo, vote. Remember when he said that? He's always presenting that as the only option in order to change things. All you have to do is just vote. That's the only way you can change things. Bullshit. Because they don't want you to look at your history of how we actually change things on a material level with our feet on the ground. They don't want you to know that. They don't want you to do that. This is why they're making it harder for you to protest in the streets. Look at what they're doing to the protesters in Cop City. They're getting RICO laws against them, charges, because they don't want them to actually use their actual rights as citizens in order to change the government. You have third and fourth options. Press the red button. Pull the red lever. Do not let them think that you only have one option. They're scammers. That's exactly what they are. And they won't stop until they actually have absolute power. That's the point. And I really think that, I don't know, something tells me that RFK already knew all this. But it's just like, they're rigging it against me. Oh no. We ain't fools, Robert. Mama didn't raise no fool. Do we look like Boo Boo the Fool to you? Play with your mama. Don't play with us. Anyway. Did you like the stream? Go ahead and give me a like. All right. Also, just to let you guys know, I just want to thank you guys as well for anybody who's a patron on Patreon as well as Coffee. I just want to thank you guys for that, because without you guys, I wouldn't have been able to do this as well. So that also means a lot. And I forgot to put this person's name in so that I can thank them as well. Let me make sure that I put this name in as well, because okay, whoop. All right, let's see. All right, so new patron, thank you so very much to Doral Reeves. Thank you so very much for becoming a patron as well on Patreon. So if you guys would like to, you guys can also go to my Patreon if you guys would like to and become patrons as well. Let me show you guys the tiers just in case so you guys can see it as well. So let's go. Let's roll that beautiful beam footage. So you have members, right, which is the first tier. Then you also have solidarity tier. You have comrades, Jaybefaunters, super Jaybefaunters, and super duper Jaybefaunters, and mega Jaybefaunters. So thank you so very much to all the people who are in those tiers, and I appreciate it very much. All right, so I'm going to go to the chat really quick. I kept forgetting to go to the chat throughout the stream, but we will go back and talk about these things. Outlaw All Billionaires says a vote against DNC corruption and election rigging is a vote for Trump. Hey, wait a minute. Oh my goodness, that's funny. Outlaw All Billionaires also says a vote for Biden is a vote for anti-$15 an hour, anti-Medicare for all, anti-immigrants, anti-worker strikes, oil drilling in Alaska, troops for the border, $80 billion for the IRS. Wait, what? Angel Rivera says, I met Indian Reef in 2021 on Twitter, and he put me into a DM group with a bunch of creators, and I was like, what the F? Why am I here? LOL, thanks for that. That's very nice. That's awesome. VS Adams says, JB, Kevin Gostola had a guy on who wrote a book about dialysis. I tried a couple times to send you the link. I'd love for you to interview him. Yeah, my email is actually on the channel. So if you would like to, you just go to the about. My email's there. You can email it to me and I'll take a look at it. Thank you so very much. Swery Fairy, who is a JB member, says, raise disability and SSI and tie it to the real cost of living. Yes, absolutely. Because the thing is that those of us who are on disability, like myself, we're really going through it. We're suffering. And we are literally at the poverty level. Some of us are below poverty levels. And our rent is skyrocketing. I'm literally paying rent and combined, because my mother lives with me, combined what we're paying for rent is, I think, over 50% of our income. Even with me having a channel and all that, I don't get much. So, yeah. So just letting y'all know. Yeah. Jen McMahon says, actually, you do have a choice. You can exercise your right not to vote. That is also a choice. But I also would like to say that your right to not vote is something that you can do, but you also, I think, is best to couple it with communicating with your community, doing some type of action with your coworkers or with your fellow tenants, or doing things on the ground, because that also helps as well. You can circumvent that right to vote, because guess what? You have a right either to exercise it or not exercise it. I'm also saying that you also have the ability to go around it and just do things on the ground. That's also another option outside of voting that you can also do. Thank you so very much, Jen. Angel says, JB, Indy is also private prisons. They need immigrants to cross the border in order to get more prisoners so that the private prisons can make more money. That is very egregious what they do, but yeah, it's true. So Bill Bradley says, vote on ballot initiatives if your state has them, though. Yes, this is also a great point. If you don't want to vote for any candidate, fine, but you can leave all those blank and just vote on ballot initiatives. Because there's some, like for instance, here in Florida, we passed the $15 an hour minimum wage in Florida. So they work. The thing is that, you know, for instance, there was a ballot initiative about allowing people with prior convictions and prison time, we gave them the right to vote again. Now, of course, the politicians in the Florida State House and Senate were like, well, we can't allow that. So they put some, you know, financial barriers to that, which is completely messed up. But we as a people came together and passed it without a politician. And if you really think about it, when workers get to choose how our government is operated, a lot of the things that people like you and I really think is something good, guess what? It'll get passed. As many elderly people live here, we all know, some of us elderly and disabled people, we all know the benefits of programs like Medicare, right? What if we made a single payer healthcare system here in Florida? That would help out so many working people in so many poor people and children. People over the age of 26. What if you're between the ages of 27 and 64? Imagine how many people that is. Imagine how many people that would help. Imagine how many businesses would save money because they didn't have to pay for healthcare. Right? You guys are really talking in there. All One Same says health insurance should not be through the employer. Oh, I agree. Absolutely. All right. So DC says all war criminals they liberated, some proles with the blood of other proles, some of whom were their own countrymen. All governments are bastards. Government's a tool. It depends on who's wielding that tool. So it depends on who is actually wielding that tool. And so when the workers collectively own and use the tool, then that's how the tool is going to be utilized, just like a hammer. It can be used to build or it can be used to destroy. The corporate dictators use the hammer in order to destroy the worker. The workers can use the hammer to bring the corporate dictators to heel. And I think that's the purpose of government, is to be weld for those of us so that we can have a better and more productive society. Let me check on the rock. All right, we're good there. All right, so thank you so very much to everybody tuning in. I got to get going because a brother is hungry. I had a smoothie before, but for some reason it just went through me. So I'll be going to that. Of course, to look out for clips coming on this week, as well as if you guys have not already, I will be trying to continue the Laziness Does Not Exist reading by Dr. Devon Price. So I'll be doing that. And then also Asada Shakur's autobiography. I will also be continuing that as well, because these books are essential for our understanding of how the world works. Thank you so very much for that. Also, I will be on Misty Winston's show this evening at 5:30 p.m. on TNT Radio, so be sure to tune in to that. I'm excited to have a conversation with my friend my friend Misty, as well as make sure to tune in. Also, I think I'm doing a show this Saturday. Stay tuned. So we'll be doing that as well. And oh no, I won't be doing the show this Saturday. I'll be meeting with the group for the RBN chapter, Orlando chapter. Yeah, we'll be doing some things on the weekend. So yeah, but I'll also be doing a reading. So look out for that as well. Thank you so very much to everybody for tuning in. If you guys have not already, put out a like before I leave. And look, like I always say, water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Continuously try to speak out, just like Indy did when he formed Indie News Network. Speak out as much as you possibly can, because that is what's important. Because if not, then the enemy wins, and the enemy is the corporate dictators. The enemy is white supremacy. It's homophobia, transphobia. The enemy is, war. The enemy is, misogyny and misogynoir. The enemy is is classism and ableism. Those are the enemies. And only together as workers, as the people, can we actually end these things. Also, stand in solidarity with workers, no matter if they're documented or not, because ultimately it's not really us against one another. It's actually us versus the corporate dictators that are exploiting all of us. And please, to RFK Jr., please just either do what you need to do and get out of the Democratic Party and run, or just give everybody their money back, dude. Just do that, because you're wasting people's time. And sitting there just waiting for what the DNC is going to do, you and I both know that they're screwing you already. So there's no point in staying in unless it's to sell books. But anyway, take care. Mwah. Forehead kisses to every single one of you. Deuces, Bruces. I love you. Yoo-hoo. Music.